morning. Good morning. It is 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. It is June the 10th, and if it's 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, that means it's time to track the tropics. From Central Florida, I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And from what's been a stormy Savannah, Georgia so far this morning, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
All right, so Jeremy, still early in the hurricane season. Thankfully, there is nothing significant out there, but there are things to track. So let's get right to it and see what's doing.
Yeah, in the Atlantic Basin, pretty quiet, but one thing we'll point out, it's nothing alarming, in the main development region between Africa and the Leeward, Windward Islands, we do have at least some thunderstorm complexes out there. And yesterday, I did see one of the branches of NOAA that deals with tropical weather highlighted a few tropical waves out there. And again, just a little area of disturbed weather, some showers, thunderstorms. So you can see a little train of moisture moving from the west coast of Africa over towards kind of just the north end of South America, the southern end of some of the islands there. But nothing alarming. But as our forecasting goes, maybe something that it's a little clue for later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good news is that yes, there is moisture out there. There is stuff to track. But over the next 7 days' time, it's important to note that the National Hurricane Center has 0 areas expected to develop. So, at least for now, we continue to be nice and quiet in the tropical basin. But Jeremy, we were talking about this and how at the end of the day, the month of June is very typically a quiet month for hurricane season.
Only 5% of all named storms. And I was thinking back to last season. Remember the forecast going into last year, not necessarily ours. We did have above average, but some were like, wow, maybe we'll challenge one of the busiest hurricane seasons ever in terms of named storms. Well, the fourth named storm did not come in until early August when that
Right,
was Debbie, which passed a little bit west of Florida. That
right.
directly impacted my area with a lot of rain. So if you think back to last year, we didn't get to, I believe, the fourth named storm until early August. So here we are in June, no named storms. Now, if we would get through June and July without a storm or maybe just one, then we'd be like, oh, hey, maybe it is going to be a little quieter, but not judging anything yet.
Right. Well, and when you think about it too, the months always build toward the peak. And I feel like the peak of hurricane season always is just so slam jammed. When you look at that percentage of storms by month, but kind of in a more graphical sense, you really see how it's August, September, and even October into the very beginning of November that are really jammed, with the peak of hurricane season being September 10th. But when we look at kind of the reasons why, Jeremy, things have been so slow to start, one of the big things is big area of high pressure well north of the main development region. It kind of has helped to throw some wind shear into the overall setup. That's piece number one. Piece number two is even though these tropical waves have been working off the coast of Africa, there have been some subtly cooler waters, but there has been an absolute large amount of that Saharan dust plowing across the Atlantic. And uh,
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
yeah, and I think maybe with some of those disturbances that we saw recently, even one that was kind of crossed over Florida was off the southeast coast. That was very low, 10% chance of development. But all of these sort of clusters of thunderstorms, maybe a little bit lower pressure, has been fighting dusty, dry air that's been really clogging up the Caribbean and also the Gulf. You don't really expect much in the main development region this early in the season, but these other areas that had some thunderstorms, maybe slightly lower pressures, have just been inundated with that dusty, dry air. So that's a good thing. It limits tropical development, but moving forward, maybe we have less of that dust at times when we get back to maybe some of these, what would be our more active parts of the pattern.
100%, 100%. And if you look here, this is the Saharan dust layer. It has been dusty here in Central Florida. We've got a big layer of that, and that's even sneaking up into your area, Jeremy. But look down around Puerto Rico, look down toward, say, Jamaica, and even into the Caribbean. There is another big layer of dust that's going to be working through. So watch how, looking ahead to late this week, it arrives into my area again. So, we're in that setup, right, where the Saharan dust is continuing to blow off the coast of Africa. across the main development region, and yes, into the Caribbean and into the Gulf. So our typical June environments for development, once again, will remain kind of cut off atmospherically.
Yeah, and I know you were going to fire up some of the ensemble models just to take a longer look ahead, maybe like the next 10 days or so, just to confirm. Not really much brewing out there right now. So if you have that, we can take a look at that.
Yep.
And yeah, we're not really expecting a whole lot, but I would say maybe this is like kind of like sneaky season, June, July. You can get something just close in a little area of low pressure. The
Yep.
waters are certainly warm enough now that we could get something, but as of right now, it looks fairly quiet.
Yeah, so this is the GFS ensemble, and notice this is around the 16th. There's a couple little areas of spin that some of the ensemble members are trying to show, and there's some hints, right, that maybe around the 18th, some of the like two of the 30 GFS ensemble members are trying to show something, maybe working over toward Texas, but. In computer models, consistency breeds confidence, right? And when we don't see that consistency, we don't get confidence of anything trying to develop. So there's no big concern there. There's another ensemble member around the 23rd trying to show a sneaky thing, another one around the 26th. So there's no big indicators there. If we look over at the European ensembles, rolling through, big ridge of high pressure, Bermuda high, holding firm. Beyond that, lots in the Pacific. You can kind of see there in the bottom left corner near Jeremy's head. I'll bring it full so you can kind of see it there. Lots of stuff going on in the Pacific, but really and truly nothing to speak of in the Gulf or in the Caribbean basins.
Yeah, and while I chat here for 1 second, check your comments. Someone on mine said they couldn't hear audio, but maybe they just don't have it up on their computer. I know
Yeah.
we're hearing each other just fine
Yep.
here. But yeah, if you think back here, maybe 10 days ago or so, when we were in late May, the GFS was just showing like tropical systems, hurricanes, and then closer you get, it keeps pushing them off. Well, now here we are around June the 10th, and that's when it was showing some of this
Right.
tropical activity, maybe near Florida or in the Gulf. And what have we had? Nothing.
Right. Right. And it's funny. One of the meteorologists here in Florida, over in the Tampa market, posted that he posted a screenshot of the model from 2 weeks ago. And he said, that's why you don't trust models 2 weeks out. You're fine, Scott. We're just doing a thing. I'm in your house. I'm in Scott's house. He's one of our directors. Sorry to encroach. I'll be out in a couple minutes.
Everyone is welcome for tracking the tropics,
Yeah,
whether it's an in-person audience or online,
that's
right?
right. Yeah. We've got the in-person and,
The
but
studio audience.
but he posted an image of yesterday from 2 weeks ago and basically said, this is why you don't trust computer models 2 weeks out because they do goofy stuff. And so, yeah, to that point, Jeremy, it's like we take our deep dives, but we also make sure to put perspective in there that computer models
Right.
are guidance, not gospel.
Yeah, I mean, we do tons of long range forecasting. It's something we love, but also we're also realistic with some of the things like the Saharan dust
Right,
that can kind of choke any development off.
right,
And also, we're not biting on every run of the GFS and posting it. You could go back through my social media. I don't even think I was talking about any of those longer range GFS things, just because the European was never really showing
right,
it.
right,
If someone wants to show an ensemble and maybe do a comparison, I can live with that. But if someone's just showing, oh wow, look at this, 12 days from now, here's one snapshot of one run of the
right.
GFS showing this, and I think that's kind of what you were alluding to, what that person in Tampa highlighted.
Well, and
I
and
mean,
take
what
yeah.
they were showing is what people were showing maybe a week or so out or 10 days, and then the reality that there wasn't anything.
And I think the other important thing too is like you and I are paid as meteorologists for our TV stations, right? Some of these hype folks are only paid by getting clicks and likes on social media. And there's a very different strategy here. Your and my strategies is to get information out. And whether one person clicks like on it or a billion, it doesn't matter. We
Right.
are we are here as messengers, whereas the people that are like, Florida Weather Force or Georgia Weather Force, Weather Team South Carolina, right? Like it doesn't matter. To them, they're just trying to get the likes and shares and all that stuff because that's what drives their business product. for you and I, it's a very different thing. And I think that that's important is what drives what we do.
Right. And I think if people take the time and look at enough different sources, they're going to find the one that they can trust.
Yeah,
And if they follow things for a long enough time, they'll be like, well, this source is posting the same thing every hurricane season, and it's never right and whatever. So
right.
it's frustrating for us, but I think if people do play the long game and are looking at weather sources,
Yeah.
it may not be a day or two or a week, but over the long term, I think they'll find the best sources, and hopefully, we're part of that best source group.
I, if not, we will go down fighting as hard as we can.
Right?
Hey, one thing I wanted to point out, I showed this yesterday on my coffee talk, but I think it's going to be it's a good thing to show again here, which is this is the Madden Julian oscillation, and Jeremy, it's one of those resources that we can use, right, to discuss windows of opportunity. And if you look at it, think of it like this: areas of brown have sinking air, areas of green have kind of rising air. So notice right off the bat, there's green in the Pacific Basin and there's green over Central America, which is why the CAG lows have been coming off of Central America and then moving over to the Pacific Basin. So this makes sense. And if we go through time, yeah, yeah. Scott asked if that's the gyre. Yeah, from
Okay.
our live studio audience. Notice though, around the 15th, this Sunday, the Madden Julian oscillation does try to throw a little bit of a phase around the Caribbean. I'm not saying that there's something that will develop in that time frame, but at the very least, we see that it goes a little in phase, and then again looking at particularly around the 23rd, 24th, notice the Caribbean and the Gulf go in phase. So there's an opportunity there, particularly 23rd, 24th, 25th, where it wouldn't surprise me if a little sneaky low, just as you were talking about, Jeremy, tries to form there. Not that the GFS or the European sees it this far out, but you kind of start to see some of the building blocks where you could get a sneaky little thing.
Yeah, it's we got to take all the clues and all the information possible, and try to solve the mystery of when will a tropical system form, or at least have the environment present in case we get a cluster of thunderstorms or some
Right.
lower pressure. Obviously, now that we're into the summer season, the water temperatures are plenty warm enough, even if they are a degree or so cooler in parts of the Atlantic Basin compared to a year ago. They're still plenty warm that you can have tropical development.
Right. Yeah. The number we look for here, right, is like 80 degrees. And look around here, especially in the loop current, but even just elsewhere around the Caribbean, you're seeing plenty of those temperatures there well into the 80s. And again, 80 degrees, that's your moniker to be able to attain tropical development or not.
Yeah, and yesterday was the first time I've seen water temperatures by my coastline, Tybee Island. They were 82 degrees. That's the warmest they've been so far this year. We kind of have been fluctuating 78, 79 degrees, and then yesterday was one of the first times I've seen it into the low 80s. So typically,
Right.
once we get to the low 80s, it generally stays 80 or warmer through at least about the early part or middle part of September.
Yeah, yeah. So we're there. It's just a matter of, now the atmosphere is kind of playing its catch up, etc. And so we do our thing. So for now, all is quiet. I love to see that. You love to see that. Hopefully we'll continue. But at the end of the day, we're going to be here every Tuesday. So I think that's an important note as well. As this is an open dialogue, a two-way street for all of our viewers to hopefully make sure everybody is good and calm. Particularly, Jeremy, when things get very very rough.
Yeah, and when we do get some systems forming, or if they're threatening a coastline or something, we'll be on here a little more often as we were last year. And I was looking in the comments here, didn't really see any questions. People just happy we're on. And the person that asked about the audio said they then turned their volume up,
Yeah.
and
Well, yeah.
so it's working. It is working.
Listen, it's the Mondayest of Tuesdays, right? That's the
There
way to
you
look
go.
at it. Somebody asked, I thought this was an interesting question. Chris Pierce asked, is the MJO model less accurate at the extreme chronological end like other models? I mean, I think at the end of the day, the further you go out on a model, the rougher it is. But the MJO is looking at different things. It's looking at kind of phases. And do you want to just kind of
Right.
discuss a little bit about what the
Well,
Madden Julian oscillation is?
Well, I mean, you're kind of just looking for favorite time frames in a larger scale part of the atmosphere where you could have maybe some general rising motion. That map you were showing where it was like the green and the brown.
Right.
The brown, probably like a little more like just a general higher pressure over the area.
Yep.
And then the greens are a little more favorable where it's some lower of pressures, but it's over a wide scale. So it's not like it's a more localized thing. So
Yep.
this is over a little broader area, covers more real estate in the
And
atmosphere.
and that gives us the opportunity to look at timelines where there's phase. Like for example, if you just take a look at this run of the GFS, right? You've got green over Central America and spilling over into the Caribbean. So, like, if there was an opportunity for a CAG load to want to kind of pop off and develop and be into the Atlantic Basin, it looks like around, the 24th, 25th, 26th, toward the end of June, that would be a time frame where we would be in phase and have the opportunity to see that sort of a thing.
Yeah, so we'll keep a close eye on it. We've had some of those little quick tropical systems form. It seems like the first one or two of the season,
Yep.
the last several years. Maybe not last year per se, because the second one ended up being what was a Category 5
Yep.
barrel.
Yep. Yeah. Barrel. Right. Right.
But the first one last year, I believe, was in the Gulf, and it was very quick. And then it seems like some of these initial ones are just a very brief little tropical systems. But yeah, last year that was late June that we had barrel form, and I don't really think there were a lot of people forecasting a storm that strong. So if you get something to form, you have to watch it, even when it's June.
100%. All right, got a good question here. Kenneth is asking, why do winter lows grow over land, but tropical lows dissipate over land? Yeah, no, Kenneth, I think that's a fantastic question on Facebook. Thank you for that.
I think
So,
you're talking about mid latitude cyclones
right.
too in the winter, and these are tropical systems are warm core.
It's think of it as the anatomy, right? So these systems that you track during the winter months, they're completely they're an area of low pressure, but their core, their organization is totally different. They're atmospheric, they're mid latitude. They're higher up in the latitudes, they're higher up in the atmosphere, and they develop these storm systems. Whereas tropical systems are the absolute personification of the water cycle: evaporation, condensation, precipitation. That is how tropical systems form, and because of that, they're in time, and it's cold core, we're higher in the atmosphere, winter stuff, whereas warm core tropical. It's because it's that humidity, all that moisture. It's evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and it's the water cycle over and over and over again. So once you lose that fuel source over land, it's going to fall apart. So yeah, and that's one of the things, particularly late season, that we struggle with, is this idea of, is it a tropical system or is it not a tropical system, right? Are there fronts attached? And that's where you get into extratropical and subtropical storms, Jeremy, and that gets into the real meat and potatoes of this thing.
And then you could really get a meteorologist discussion going if you're talking about Sandy from years ago,
Yeah.
because that was a late season, kind of got absorbed into or moved into a mid latitude cyclone, and then was it still enough warm core part of it or subtropical to call it a whatever as it was moving in? But either way, I mean, that was just a monster storm that had wide ranging impacts up through mid Atlantic, Northeast, and New England. But that's probably a good example where you can kind of get on that. Is it this? Is it that? Or isn't it?
Well, and to add to that, so if you recall, and if you were, Oliver says Sandy was a big mess. Yeah, exactly. But if you recall, the National Hurricane Center stopped issuing advisories right before Sandy made landfall because it was transitioning to a kind of a hybrid system. And that caused all kinds of problems. And we have now since learned that the National Hurricane Center will continue to issue advisories or even hand advisory responsibility over, but they'll still have a cone, that sort of thing. Because, as soon as it was no longer a tropical system, people are like, oh, it's good, it's not a problem. And it's like, no, no, no. Sandy was every bit as strong. It just was transitioning from a warm core to a hybrid cold core type storm. Again, this
Right.
gets into it. This is like a doctor diagnosing flu A versus flu B. At the end of the day, you're still going to feel like crap afterward.
Right. That's a good way to look at it. But yeah, warm core, think of the tropics. And then if you're a mid latitude cyclone, think of like the Midwest or the Northeast or a nor'easter or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So Polly's asking on your page, Jeremy, do you think we will have one like Helene this season? I mean, I feel like that's such a broad question, right?
Right. I think each of these have kind of their own different look and impacts to them. And Helene may be a storm we don't see again in terms of the impacts went from Florida all the way up to like into the Appalachians, where it was like pretty big time impacts. Even like Augusta, which is an area that usually you see these storms weaken, they had hurricane force wind gusts there and every bit as much damage as we saw down into parts of Florida. So it was a kind of a crazy storm, and of course, it dumped like catastrophic amounts of rain in
Right.
parts of the Appalachians. So exactly something like that, probably not. However, what I do think is our hot spots highlight some of those same areas of the Gulf again.
Yeah.
So we could see something move maybe in a similar area that we've seen in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That's certainly a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think the good news for right now is this. There's nothing out there, nothing expected to be out there. So we're on the beginnings of a hurricane season, and we know we'll be here to track it, and we'll be here for you every step of the way. And while it's a Tuesday event, Jeremy, you and I both know when storm, we go to Tuesdays and Thursdays pretty easily, and then as things start ramping up to locations, we can step into an everyday kind of an event if
Right.
need be as well. Yeah, you and I, we clear our schedules real quick when stuff's threatening.
Yes. we are when the weather's at its worst, we have to be at our best. That is for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. Do you have anything else you could think of?
Nope. All the active weather this morning, and I've been watching the radar here. We had some severe thunderstorm warnings, and we had one very, very brief tornado warning,
Yeah.
northern part of my area. So our thunderstorms are moving out, and hopefully it's a little quieter the rest of the day now.
Works for me. All right, listen, thank you, buddy. And thank you all for hanging out for Tracking the Tropics. We'll see you again 10 a.m. next Tuesday. But in the meantime, from kind of stormy, I mean, storms move in our direction. So from kind of stormy Central Florida, I'm West 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And from Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist